Well, good morning. And thanks to the Lean Institute of Brazil for inviting me down here today. This conference is incredible, and it's really good to be back in Brazil again. Creating the future. It's a bit of a lofty title, but in a sense, thank you. Yeah, we're good. Creating the future is really what we're trying to do when we develop a business strategy. Yeah, I mean that's really essentially what we're trying to accomplish. It's either that or trying to predict what our competitors are going to do and reacting to that. And quite frankly, that doesn't work very well. And this, of course, is not a new discussion, no less than probably the preeminent business strategist of our lifetime, and one of my favorite business thinkers, Peter Drucker, said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." And I think that's great advice. I think it's a powerful way of thinking. But what many companies struggle with is how exactly do we do that? Yeah? One great way to do that is through product and process development. When you develop new products, you have the opportunity to change your trajectory, to create your future for both your company and your customers, and in some cases, your entire industry. And there's many examples of companies that have done this successfully. Joe Sutter and his team bet the entire Boeing company on an idea that many people thought would never work. But they created the 747 and transformed world travel. When Toyota first mentioned that they were going to develop a luxury car, I can tell you that the industry was incredibly skeptical, especially the European companies that had dominated that space for so long. But they persevered. They created perfection. They built not only a great car, but a powerful brand and changed the industry. And today, the Lexus is still the #1 selling brand, at least in North America, I think maybe even the world. Sergey Brin and Larry Page really did put the world's information at our fingertips, and they created a new verb, Google. And Steve Jobs not only put 1,000 songs in our pocket, but he did put a dent in the universe. It's actually hard to remember a time when we didn't have all these smart devices, and that's really the legacy of the work that Apple did in their product development. And Ford Motor Company, a company who the experts were predicting their imminent demise, not only survived, but is growing at a rate that they haven't in a very long time, including building the #1 product on the planet right now. So all of these companies really did create a new future for themselves. They changed their trajectory and in many cases changed their industry. Unfortunately, that's not how many companies think about product development. Instead, they think about it as something to be survived, almost a necessary evil. And many companies talk to me about product programs that are always late, always over cost, launch nightmares, products that are nearly impossible to manufacture. They talk about product programs as actually being divisive forces in their organization. Instead of bringing it together, it drives it apart. And worse than all of that, the products never seem to live up to expectations, whether it's with regard to the quality of the product attributes or the financial forecasts. And in some sense, these companies are also creating the future. It's just not a very good one. But the good news is more and more companies, a growing number of companies, are starting to recognize the powerful potential of product and process development. And they're really starting to work in this space. It's difficult. It is a significant challenge to work in this area. It's hard to get information. It's hard to get started, but it's well worth the effort. Because getting this right can make all the difference in the world. A great product can drive tremendous enterprise growth. It can become a competitive advantage for your organization. What's more, 60 to 70% of your costs, your ongoing operating costs, are determined during the product development process, right? So many times I've been working on the shop floor on improving a process, wishing that I could have been there in the beginning, where we had less constraints and a much better ability to have an impact on that process. And this is the opportunity that is in product development. And there's another tremendous opportunity, perhaps even a one-of-a-kind opportunity, to bring the enterprise together, right? Your product or your core process is the one thing that your entire organization has in common. And product development is not an engineering thing. It's not a design thing. It's an enterprise thing. Yeah? It requires the involvement of manufacturing, marketing, finance, engineering, all working together to create great products and processes. And as such, it's a tremendous lever to build a level of collaboration in your organization that really is not possible in any other area of the company. Yeah? And so more and more companies are starting to take advantage of this. And they're turning to lean product and process development because it's much more than just a strategy for developing the next hit product. It's a sustainable system for creating new and profitable value streams, as Al Ward used to say. It focuses on not only developing great products, but also stronger people and better performing organizations simultaneously. And as such, it should be an integral part of your annual strategy development and deployment process, almost a centerpiece of your annual Hoshin. So, to better understand lean product and process development, I thought I would quickly review 4 high-level fundamental principles that clearly differentiated from traditional product development. And the first step is to deeply understand what your product needs to be. And this is so much more than just asking your customer. It's about immersing yourself in the environment where your customer interacts with your product. It's about understanding the full context of your product and customer interaction. Sort of, as Rich Sheridan likes to say, becoming a high-tech anthropologist, right? And really understanding what the opportunity is for your product. It's so much more than just reading a marketing report or a spec sheet. You have to get out of your office and go to the Gemba and understand how people work with your product to really find the opportunities and understand what it needs to be. If you don't get this first step right, then almost by definition, the rest of your process will be waste, because you'll be producing something that people really don't care about. And there's a number of great stories about chief engineers who have gone through this process with some great success, like the chief engineer for the Sienna minivan, who spent more than a year driving around North America to better understand his primary customer and how his product was utilized in North America. And so he went to places like home improvement stores where he saw customers struggling to fit plywood into the back of their minivan, and so they made it a little bit wider. He watched as a soccer mom drove her kids around and realized that they needed to add cup holders, right? Cup holders is a big thing in North America. And drop down video screens to entertain the kids. He found out that the minivan was actually more about the kids than it was about the parents. They drove across the plains and found out that they needed to change the aerodynamics of the vehicle so it didn't get buffeted so much by the wind. And they even made major architectural change and moved away from a mid-engine design. And the result of all this upfront work was that the Sienna went from one of the worst-selling minivans in North America to the best, beating out the Dodge Caravan at the time, which was a position people thought Caravan would hold forever. It was a tremendous success. And while you're studying and while you're seeking to understand, experiment in sets, right? Don't just sit in a conference room and argue about ideas. The tendency there is for the best debater to win, right? Try an experiment, develop a hypothesis, and do it in sets. Instead of just iterating on a single solution over time, Think broadly about solution space and converge on a solution as you see the results of your experiments come in. It leads to a much deeper understanding. And you need to do more than just understand. You need to communicate this to the rest of the organization. And one of the best ways to do this is through the Chief Engineer's Concept Paper. It's a fairly simple document, about 12 to 15, 18 pages. It has both qualitative and quantitative information in it that explains what the vision of the product is. But more than that, by sharing this document across your functional leadership, you can gain alignment and a common vision for what the product needs to be. And further, you can understand everybody's roles and responsibilities in delivering that product. And so it becomes not only a vision, but a sort of a contract across the organization that you can refer to throughout the development process to make sure that you're staying on course, right? That you're holding true to the vision of what the product needs to be. It's a very, very powerful document. Once you do deeply understand and you're aligned, now it's about shortening your lead time. It's about speed and disciplined execution to market. What we would know as eliminating waste and creating flow. And one of the most important steps in this process is to understand your product development capacity. Very few companies really understand what their capacity is because they don't understand their process capability. They haven't spent the time to really understand how capable their process is. And there's so much hidden factory and rework that's endemic in product development that you really need to go through this work to understand how your processes work in the real world before you can understand your true capacity. It's much more than just adding up engineering hours and divvying those out to the different functions. It's a process that requires some time and some thought. The next important thing, and probably the highest leverage principle that we used at Ford, was synchronizing cross-functionally, right? That is to say, understanding the interdependencies between cross-functional processes, aligning the inputs and outputs, right? The gives and gets that take place so that you can do more concurrently, right? And you can be more successful in your concurrent applications so that you can increase that overlap and therefore shorten your overall lead time. So instead of focusing on single operations, think about it as a system and how it fits together. This takes some significant work, but as I mentioned, it's probably the highest leverage thing that we did to shorten our overall lead time. And then the last idea for creating flow I'll leave you with is this idea of compatibility before completion. And what I mean by that is rather than just focusing on individual design releases, right? Think about how that design fits with the rest of the system and build compatibility checks into the process. So early on, when we were trying to shorten our lead time, we focused on design releases, which is sort of natural, and we put together metrics for release timeliness. And we did get a higher percentage of designs released on time, but we also got a spike in engineering changes. As these individual designs entered the system, we found they weren't compatible with interdependent parts, with the manufacturing system, or with the supplier footprint. Yeah? And that led to late changes and a lot of rework. And so we built in critical compatibility requirements, say for serviceability, manufacturing, fit and finish, so that we knew when these designs were released, they were compatible with the larger system. So it's sort of a systems engineering perspective that's very powerful. And then in some sense, you can think of product development as transforming knowledge into value, right? And from that perspective, it should be clear how important it is to become good at learning. And not only at learning and creating books of knowledge that sometimes just collect dust on the shelf, how to apply that learning to create better products and processes. That's really what the challenge is. And then learning how to build that into the way you do your development so that it's not just an extra thing that we do, it's a fundamental part of how we develop new products. One way to do that is through building in rapid learning cycles, or what Al Ward used to call lambda cycles, so that you experiment and learn quickly within the process of development. Another huge opportunity are in design reviews. I've found that this is one of the most overlooked opportunities that there is in product development to improve both the product and your engineering community. Design reviews are often just another term for status reviews. Are your designs done? Are your tests run? Are your tools released? That sort of thing. It really should be about going deep on the product and really engaging cross-functionally to make the product better. The other thing it allows you to do is understand not only your engineers' proposed solutions, but how they're thinking about those solutions. Through the questions you ask and the behaviors that you display, you can do a tremendous amount of learning and development of your organization as you gain insights. And whenever you can, hold your design reviews at the Gemba. Go to where the product is, whether it's the assembly plant, the tool shop, wherever it happens to be, and bring the group there. It's much, much more powerful experience. And then underlying the whole thing should be a system of standards. A system of standards where it's clear what's fixed and what's flexible, so that you allow for creativity, but you have a system to guide the development of the new products. Yeah? And also make sure that you develop a system of standards with built-in continuous improvement. Not a system that causes your organization to stagnate, but a system that's dynamic and evolves as your organization evolves and as your understanding grows. And then finally, but I would argue most importantly, lean product and process development is a people-centric system. It's all about people and developing people. And I would say in some sense, that's what lean is all about. I remember many years ago when I first met John Shook, one of the things that he told me is lean is not people agnostic. People are the centerpiece of lean, and that's what makes it different. That's what draws all of us to lean and makes us so passionate about this, is because it is about the people. And the first place to begin is to invest in the development of your engineers, right? To provide the framework and the opportunities for your engineers or other people in your development process to achieve excellence in their particular discipline, to pursue mastery, or what I always talk about as towering technical competence. One of the most powerful ways to do that is with a matrix organization, where you have strong functional organizations running vertically that are responsible for deep technical knowledge within their discipline and for learning across programs. And at the same time, you need strong independent program teams that work across this matrix, typically led by a chief engineer who owns the development of the program from the very beginning all the way through to the end. And then harness the passion for product within your organization. It made a huge difference for us as we worked to bring our organization together at Ford to rally around creating great products, because it can drive a level of collaboration that can actually become a sustainable competitive advantage for the entire organization, right? As you get people to work together in ways that they've never done before. So lean product and process development is not new, although its resurgence and growth in popularity has been recent. It really started with some research that Al Ward did back in the 80s on set-based recursive design. Taka Fujimoto wrote a great chapter looking at Toyota's product development superiority in the machine that changed the world. He then went on to Harvard to work with Kim Clark, and they did a series of studies and wrote some excellent books that I still recommend. If you haven't read the High Performance Product Development series, you should definitely do that. And then that led to a series of studies at the University of Michigan, also by Al Ward, Jeff Leiker, Durward Sobek, who I know has been down here before, Pat Hammett, and others, and a study that I did, which led to a book that Jeff Leiker and I wrote. More recently, a study led by Hopman and a group of researchers at ETH Zurich and MIT did 2 independent studies looking across 400 different companies and found high levels of correlation between these principles and superior performance in product development. So it's been definitely validated. But more important, I mentioned the companies who are starting to work in this space are really beginning to experience success with this work. Pfizer delivered more than $500 million in top-line growth while simultaneously reducing costs by $30 million. Goodyear went from 27% of programs on time to 90% of programs on time, and that was at the same time that they reduced their cycle time by 70%. IBM delivered more than a 30% increase in smartphone chip capability on a dramatically accelerated schedule. So short, in fact, they've asked me not to share the details, but it was incredible. And Menlo has been embracing lean product development principles for a number of years in pursuit of joy, but at the same time have really created a veritable innovation machine that is much like their namesake, and a really great story. If you've had a chance to read Joy Inc. by Rich Sheridan, great. If not, I would highly recommend that book. It has some great insights in it. And then, of course, my own experience at Ford Motor Company, leveraging product to save a company. I'll just talk about that for a minute. I joined Ford right after I completed the research at the University of Michigan, about a year and a half before the crisis hit. Lucky me. And about a year before Alan Mulally got to the company. And the year that Alan got to Ford, we had lost $17 billion in 1 year, $17 billion. We had been losing market share for 20 years, basically going out of business for 20 years. Our stock price was down to about $1.90. I think it was even a little bit lower than that at one point. Our suppliers were going bankrupt so quickly that my matched pair, the director of global purchasing for body and stamping, and I had to set up a war room to monitor supplier status, to figure out who we had to shovel money at just to keep our plants operating. And of course, our 2 North American competitors actually did go bankrupt at that time. We had sort of a cage fighting culture, Vale Tudo, where we fought more internally than we did externally. And probably the most difficult thing that I had to do in my whole career was when we had to lay off nearly a third of our engineering resources worldwide. And these were people who lost their jobs through no fault of their own, right? This was an awful experience. And so Alan went to Wall Street and leveraged every single thing we had, our equipment, our plants, even the Blue Oval, for a $23 billion loan. Fortunately for me, the story turned out well. Last year, I think Ford made about $8 billion, maybe closer to $9 billion. We've had, it says 2 years, but actually about 4 years of consecutive market share increase. The stock is actually closer to $18 right now. Our supply base is stronger than ever. It's global. But most importantly, our relationship with our suppliers is much, much stronger. And this turns out to be really, really key if you're going to be effective in product development, embracing the extended enterprise in the way you work. Alan Mulally brought the One Ford culture, and this was much more than just a sort of program of the week. It was really the way we started to work, collaborating around the product, and it made all the difference. And it built pride in the people for the product that they were creating. And then the biggest problem Ford has right now is hiring people. It's been a long time since Ford has grown at the rate that they're growing right now, and so in some sense they're learning how to do that. What's less well known about this story is it was all about product. When Alan came back with the $23 billion, the easy thing would have been just to hand out a little bit to everybody, right? Because our plants were old and leaky. Our equipment was old. Our engineering spaces were terrible, right? But he had the insight to understand that if that's all he did, he was just going to be putting off the inevitable, right? In 2 more years, we'd be right back in the same place all over again. Yeah? So he had the courage and the insight to basically take that $23 billion and give it to my boss, who was the global group vice president for product development, and say, here, make some products that people will actually like, right? That people will actually buy. And that's the only way we're going to change this company. And so in order to do that, we had to develop a brand new global product development process, and we had to reorganize into global engineering organizations. One of the key insights that Alan Mulally had when he first came to the company was that from the outside, he thought Ford was a global organization. But it turns out it was just a collection of regional organizations that just happened to be carrying around the same business cards. And so he worked hard to bring the organization together. And that was the foundational work that we had to do in order to clear the path to basically reinvent our entire global portfolio. And that's basically what we've spent the last almost 9 years doing. And I would argue that Ford has used product to completely change their trajectory and to create a new future for themselves. And so LEI and many of the LGN affiliates, including here in Brazil, have recognized how important this space is, how much incredible potential there is working in this space and improving in product and process development. And so we started a major initiative. It includes a learning partnership with a number of global companies where not only are the companies learning from LEI, but the companies are learning from each other as we share openly our journey to improve product and process development. We've started to develop some new material. We've updated training at LEI so that we can provide support for the companies that need that. And later this month, we'll launch a website that's dedicated to supporting companies and individual developers who want to make this improvement and have some place to turn to get questions answered, to benefit from the experience and insights of the experts that will be sharing information on that site. LEI is also sponsoring a conference for LPPD, or the Lean Product and Process Development Exchange. The next one is in Raleigh at the end of this month. I think some of you are actually attending that. It's a great opportunity to get with other companies that are working on this and learn from their experiences, learn in the real world what it's like to try to implement this. I think it's a great opportunity. And so I would love for you to join us in this initiative. But even if you decide not to, I would strongly urge you to start to work in this space. It's so, so important. And if you do, I believe that you will also create better products, a better organization, and a better future. Thank you very much.